You're listening to Spill the Sea with Ashwati Ramesh.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I know we've only met recently, but really appreciate you taking the time out for this.
Absolutely.
Of course, you and your team have been working on technology that could possibly reshape urban air transportation. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys do, and we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. I'm happy to be here. We are Sarla Aviation and we're building flying taxis. I think that's at the core of what we're doing. But we are really building this as a public transportation system. Like that's the purpose of the company, is to enable everyone to not be stuck in traffic anymore, but to be able to fly
Yeah, that
over
sounds
traffic.
very appealing.
Yeah.
Considering especially that we're sitting in the middle of Bangalore and
Correct.
traffic just seems to be going crazy here. Um, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you here? What have you been doing before you founded Sarla?
So me and my co-founder Rakesh, we kind of share a similar background. We got to meet in Germany working for the car industry. So we both had different backgrounds working in the car industry. He as an engineer, me as a designer.
Right.
And then Shabama, our third co-founder, has a software engineering background. But yeah,
Okay.
for me, I've been working as a car designer for most of my career. Spent some time working for Mercedes, spent some time working for Volkswagen.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah, thank you. Sort of realized that the car industry is not gonna change itself,
Mm,
or like mobility industry is not gonna change itself. And then I started working for a flying taxi company in Germany,
yeah.
Lilium, which Rakesh was also working for at the time.
Hmm.
And I think we were really excited about the technology we were building there. But we realized that the technology that this company, or like basically all of the Western players were building, is not going to be the technology that can enable a true mass mobility transportation system. It's
Right.
always going to be like in addition to, in Germany, like I grew up in Germany. If I want to travel from one place to another in Munich,
Hmm.
I can choose between 10 different modes of transportation.
Yeah.
So flying taxis have a hard sort of competition, which is why they're designed to enable different use cases over
Right.
there. And we wanted to build it as mass transportation, which is why we came to India.
Got it. So to kind of dig deeper into that, is that one of the reasons you decided to come here? Um, and y'all are focusing on passengers as opposed to other use cases.
Mhm.
So can you throw a little bit more light on that?
Okay, yeah. So, well, I think the second part of the question is straightforward. Like, yeah, we're doing passenger transportation. I think all the other use cases, we are also doing an air ambulance. Like that's like where we can
Okay.
save lives. I think is really important. But when it comes to logistics, I don't see electric propulsion sort of as a huge winner there. Like for these large scale, like I believe in drones as a transportation solution for like deliveries, but I don't think that like large scale flying taxis like ours will be mostly utilized for logistics. There's like a business answer to this and a personal answer to
Okay.
this. So the business answer is that what we realized working there in these Western companies that build flying taxis was that their technology is great, but their products are not built for the Indian market. However, the Indian market is the largest. Like everyone agrees that India has the most potential for flying taxis globally. That's just because most other places have sort of functioning mobility, mass mobility systems. Like the United States, cars and roads are working kind of well there. In China, we have rails that are working kind of well there.
Yeah.
In India, we have no mobility system that really works well. So
Mm,
flying taxis have a huge potential here. However, all of the products that the Western players are building are not going to be the right product to cater to that market. So
yeah.
that's why where we saw an opening where we thought it was important to build Sarla Aviation.
Right. And the
From a
personal
yeah
question.
yeah, from a personal angle, I think I was there are two interests that have driven me ever since I was a very small child. One of them is I never understood why we polluted our environment to get from one place to another when there clearly were better solutions at that time. So I'm a mobility head. I'm a nerd in that space. I love the
Yeah.
space. I want to spend my career working on that and spend my life having an impact on building better mobility systems for people, because it's what drives economy, what drives culture. Like mobility goes into every part of our lives.
Yeah.
That was one thing, and then the other thing was that I was always very interested in geopolitics, and I
Okay.
think it became like latest in 2016. It became very obvious that India is going to be at the center of sort of this century, defining how the world is going to look going forward. We have about 20% of the global population living here.
Yeah.
The economic growth, all
Is
of that we don't
insane.
have to talk about
Yeah.
exactly. We all know that. But like the combination of having India's growth right now and the massiveness of the scale of the nation, in combination with the problem that the mobility system is not working here, I think was like sort of meant for someone
For
like
someone
me.
like
Yeah.
you.
And then obviously Rakesh did his part, convincing me. I met him. I mean, he wanted to come to India.
Yeah.
I've lived.
So,
Yeah,
so Rakesh and you were working together,
correct. Yeah.
and there's also Shivam.
Yeah.
So how did this trio happen?
So Rakesh and I moved to India together in June last year to build Sarla Aviation, and we started setting out for it. And because the whole flying taxi space globally is relatively small, there a lot of us are connected over LinkedIn, whether like
Yeah.
independent of the company that we work for. And Shivam was taking a similar decision at that time, moving to India from the United States leader, which is Joby Aviation. So he was
Right.
working there, and
Yeah.
he also came to India around the same time. So a couple of weeks later, we connected over that, and then we figured out that our skill sets are just, a perfect match. Kind of. Shivam is really good with software and electronics. Rakesh is incredible at manufacturing
Yeah.
and all the mechanical engineering, airframe structures, aerodynamics, and so on. And I wanted to take care of the business expansion and strategy. So then we decided to work together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How far are we from using this in our daily life? Like, how far are we from living the Jetsons life?
Well, I mean, that's the goal. I think people have to understand that the impact that we don't think about it a lot. If we look at cities, how they're designed right now, you don't think about how a layout of a city works, or like the kind of roads that you're using, because we take it for given that there is a road and a traffic jam,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way. So the future, as you said, like the Jetsons kind of picture that we're painting, like is actually what we're aiming for. We really want to build that future where we get the traffic away from the ground and into the air. And I think that future is probably 10 to 12 years out.
That's
But
pretty close.
the initial operations for Sarla are supposed to start in 2028.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too far away.
Yeah. And then I
Awesome.
think from there it's going to scale really rapidly. Yeah.
So we'll get into the scaling bit, what's needed, but maybe just to kind of backtrack a bit and look at the bigger picture. Where are global players and your team? You have
Mm.
worked with these guys, literally on
Mm.
ground. Where are they in terms of uh, TRL levels? What
Mm.
is the success of their maiden flights looking like? If you could
Mm.
share a little bit more on that.
So yeah, I mean, the global space is shaping up really rapidly over the last like maybe 2 3 years. So we have seen the technology. If you look for companies like Joby Aviation,
Yeah,
Archer,
I've seen some videos.
Lilium,
Yeah,
yeah, the technology is pretty much there,
yeah,
and that took a couple of years to be figured out. But now it's kind of there. So technology readiness levels, I think, are almost there where they need to be commercialized.
Yeah.
But at the same but the biggest roadblock that internationally the industry has had was regulations and certification.
Right.
Because everyone wants to make sure that this is going to be safe,
Of
right?
course.
I mean, we're flying after all, so these things have to be built redundant to the next level, and that's where we see a lot of progress in the last 2 years specifically. Just in October this year, the FAA has actually released their final regulatory framework for flying taxis to become operational in the United States.
Yeah.
So the FAA is the regulatory body in the United States, and the DGCA here in India is also really catching up on that speed. So the regulatory frameworks are shaping up really quick. The political willingness and impact is shaping up really quick. So I think that globally we will see the first commercial flights probably within the next 12 months.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, China, I just have to mention it, but China is already having the first piloted pilot projects across 6 cities where they fly
where they're transporting passengers as
Yeah.
well. And how's that going?
It's going well. I don't have too many insights into
Yeah.
that, to be honest. They're going for different technology. The regulatory bodies over there have different. I mean, I think the democratic world right now is sort of going step by step, and China is just kind of has
Yeah,
been
0 to
leapfrogging.
100.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we'll come back to the regulatory part of it. I do want to spend some time there. But coming back to you guys and what y'all are actually building, can you tell us a little bit more about, things like what the range of your product is like, what the capacity is like, just some specs on what we
Yeah.
can expect?
Yeah, so we fly about 160 kilometers per battery charge.
Okay.
It takes us about 30 minutes to charge the battery.
Oh, that's quick as well.
Yeah. But we're optimizing the flying taxi. We call it Shunya, by the way, our first
Shunya.
our
Okay.
first flying taxi. And Shunya is optimized for 20-kilometer trips back to back.
Okay.
Because that's on average like what we're expecting to fly with it in the initial phases of operations.
Right.
We have 248 kilowatt hours of battery packs. They're distributed into 4 battery packs, double isolated, so they're really safe.
Right.
We have 6 passengers and 1 pilot, which is a big distinction from us to global companies, because I mentioned this earlier, but we want to make this mass transportation, and for this to be mass transportation, we have to be able to offer it at a affordable price point.
Absolutely.
Which is basically why we said, okay, let's cut down on the unnecessary technology that is just performance based, and instead rather have a bigger cabin that we can transport more people
in.
to make sure that we can sort of distribute the cost of operations amongst more people.
Is the standard lesser than the number of passengers you guys are deciding to take on?
Yeah. So the global standard is between 2 to 4 passengers. Yeah. And we have 6. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
At least 1/3 more passenger capacity is what we're having. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense because the population density is so high over here.
Correct.
You do need to make it more efficient in terms of.
That's exactly the point here. Like if you look at the American players, for example, they have longer range than we have.
Right.
Because the United States are built out very well, spread out in their built environment. So you have to cover longer distances in order to have a business case.
Yeah.
Now, for those knowing in Bengaluru, if you want to go from like Indranagar to Cormangla, that's like
I don't think I've been to Koramangala in years now because of the traffic.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like 4 kilometers away, but
Exactly.
it can take up to easily 30 minutes, if not an hour, if you get it wrong. So distance is not the key factor here. The metrics that we're looking at is economical viability.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that, obviously the weather conditions here are also very different. It's hotter. There's hurricanes and rains and all of that. So how are you kind of learning to have your product deal with those kind of challenges?
Mm. I think if you compare it to like Europe or the United States, we actually have the much more stable climate here,
Okay.
because we don't have like winters that are that strong, or temperature sort of deltas that would be that wide open.
Right.
So I think that India is actually positioned from like the natural environment pretty well for flying taxis.
Okay.
We have other things that we have to deal with, like for example, what do we do with the if like in Delhi, if you can't see 400 meters ahead.
Yeah.
So that's more stuff that we deal with, which can be handled pretty well by electronic systems and
Okay.
sensors. So
Right.
yeah, I mean these flying taxis, we have to imagine them like they have one pilot, right? But they have a lot of automated systems on board with them. So a lot of sensors, a lot of self-stabilizing technology that
Okay.
makes sure that you can always hover and stand still in the air at any point. Like for example, if you take both of your hands off the joysticks in a helicopter will most likely start to rotate and like do things that you don't want to have it doing. And a
Yeah.
flying taxi, you take it off and it's just going to stabilize.
It's just
and
going to
yeah,
stay
it's
where
just
it
going to
is.
stay in the air. So yeah,
Interesting.
there are like a lot of systems that can help us with things like the weather conditions.
Unforeseen
Yeah,
weather
yeah.
conditions. Got it. So you did talk about pilots, right? Now, how different are these pilots going to be from the regular pilots that we have for aircrafts right now? Is there going to be a whole separate process that they're going to have to, take to be certified to run these flying taxis, or is it going to be an additional thing that existing pilots can do?
So right now, from a regulatory point of view, the DGCA wants the initial batch of flying taxi pilots to have similar certification that helicopter pilots have today,
Right.
which makes sense because the flying taxis have a lot of similar um, uh, uh, like uh, skills that you would need with a helicopter as well. You take off vertically, right, and you land vertically, which is very different to like a commercial airliner where you have a long runway.
Yeah.
But going forward, I think that the certification for pilot training will be a lot more lean than what we know, because it's so much easier to fly in a fully electric flying taxi than any other flight objects that we have today. I think there's this very old sort of Bajaj Vespa scooter.
Yeah.
Like you might be familiar with,
Yes.
right? And you have like the gearbox shifter on your hand, and then you have like 3 gears that you can sort of click through.
Yeah.
And so it's like a lot more complex. For example, if you like sit on an Ola today, you just there's
Yeah.
like only one thing you can do. So
It's
like
super easy.
Yeah, exactly. So electric powertrains and the technology that has developed over the course of the years have made it a lot easier for people to operate.
Right. And that makes sense because I guess safety is a big concern as well now. And if I know a lot of friends who are scared to even fly in a normal large aircraft, right? So for them to transition to do this, they probably at the start, until it becomes a little bit more accepted widely and adopted,
Yeah.
they will want that level of certification if someone is flying them somewhere.
Everyone wants that. I think that's
Yeah.
really important to say. Like, I mean, we are the ones that want it the most. We want to make sure that, I mean, we want this to be for the people, and it has to be safe. That's the overarching priority for everything that we do.
Yeah.
And I think that it will take a little bit of time for people to adapt to this. But if you ask like people that live in 50 years from now, what they think about putting a bunch of gasoline in your in your vehicle and then driving around with it, they'll be like, "Are you crazy? Like, what have you done back then?
Yeah.
That's just you have explosives in your car and like
Yeah.
you're driving around with it." So I think it's gonna change the mindset, and our certification standards are the same that a commercial airliner has. So if you fly, from Indranagar to the airport or whatever it might be where we operate, you can expect the same safety standards that you can expect if you take a commercial airliner from Bengaluru to New York, which is the safest mode of transportation ever.
Yeah.
So this is incredibly safe. There is no single point of failure here. This, even if there is like a little bit of, say one propeller for whatever reason stops working, or one battery pack stops working, there is so much redundancy that you can always land safely.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe going into that a little bit more, can you tell us a little bit about the architecture that y'all are going with? And I know that y'all are trying to accommodate more people. So how is the architecture right for this market in India, and how is it sort of different from what global players are doing?
Yeah. So at Sarla, we have an architecture. We have a total of 7 propellers.
Okay.
4 of them, if well, 6 of them, if you look from the top of on Shunya, you will see sort of 6 propellers facing upwards that will help you to lift the Shunya into the air. Now, 4 of them are dedicated only for lifting us up in the air. So once we transition into forward flight, we have wings, right? So we're flying, we're cruising basically like a commercial airliner on our wings, which makes it a lot more energy efficient once we're in forward flight. For forward flight, we're tilting the 2 propellers in our wingtips into basically 90 degrees, and then their approach angle is facing forward, so they help us to fly forward. And then we have a pusher propeller in the rear as well that helps us also to gain speed while flying forward. So that's kind of the overall layout. Now the 4 propellers that are solely there to help us lift up in the air, they will stop once we're in forward flight, which is not the most efficient when it comes to aerodynamics, because obviously they're just standing around, they're creating drag.
Yeah.
They're also adding weight at that point because they're not operational, right? But then once we land again, they start kicking in again, and then we land. So this architecture is a hybrid lift and cruise architecture, and then there are all of the tilt rotors globally right now that we see. So most of the global players, especially in the West, are optimizing their planes to fly as far as possible. And that means that you don't want to have that weight that you carry with you, or you want to be aerodynamically optimal, right? So they have very complex mechanisms that help them to shift their propellers from like facing upwards into facing horizontal, so that they get into this cruise flight.
Right.
And if you look at players like Joby Aviation or Archer or Lilium, they're all using this tilt rotor system. But it makes it's adding a lot more moving parts, which adds maintenance, which adds costs at the end of the day. And also it adds longer range. And we were like, let's rather not add that extra of range, and let's rather decrease the cost.
Right.
And it makes it safer for us as well, because we have lesser things that can even break altogether.
Yeah.
I think simplicity is, king. Like that's what
Yeah,
we follow.
that of course makes sense. And maybe I can ask you now, what is the story behind the name of Sarla as well as Shunya?
So Sarla comes from an amazing female pilot, first ever female pilot in India, Sarla She's been obtaining her pilot license at a time in the 1930s when it was a very heavily male dominated space.
Yeah.
And we have named the company after her for several reasons. One, because she's been incredibly brave at that time, and I think that's a great sort of North Star for us to look at as a company.
Yeah.
She had a really big vision, and we have a really big vision. So so we're getting inspired by her. The other thing is that Rakesh has a small daughter.
Okay.
And I think it was important. Well, actually, she moved to India at the same time that I moved to India because she was born in
Okay.
Germany. So
okay.
yeah, so we both share our first or like the moment that we came to India, and it was important for both of us to name the company after someone who would inspire her to grow up to be anything that she wants to be.
I love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
Oh, and Shunya is I think Shunya is like one of the most like the best names that you could name your first flying taxi ever, because Shunya stands for zero, or like between everything and nothing, like anything can happen. It's like this neutral ground, right? That's like that gives birth to everything that will be. It's invented in India, the concept of zero.
Yeah.
So we see it as like the starting point for everything that will be. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so switching gears and coming back to customers, I did touch upon how people are probably going to be hesitant to do this. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Yeah.
What do you think people are going to do?
I have a great, I think, way to answer this. I want to tell you what happened to Shivam.
Okay.
Because so we have recently signed a partnership agreement with the airport here in Bengaluru,
Yeah.
right, to make Bengaluru Airport the first ever flying taxi friendly airport in India. And once these news sort of spreaded, it was really exciting to see how people reacted to that, because I think more than anything, it was people couldn't wait for this to be there.
Yeah.
But there was one person that reached out to Shivam on LinkedIn and told him, was like, I'm flying in on Sunday at like 5 p.m. How can I book?
Oh.
Like, just straightforward. Like where's the
It's like,
booking
just get me to
platform?
the airport.
Exactly. And I think that that has been, so funny and encouraging at the same time, because
Yeah.
people are waiting for this. And I think that also is a huge advantage of being here in India versus like in a place where you have modes of transportation that are working kind of well. Like
Yeah.
if I land in Munich, I can take the metro to the city,
Yeah.
or the subway, or like even a car, and like all of these modes of transportation are working well.
Yeah.
So if I now introduce flying taxis, then the German public is like,
It's
do
an
we really
option.
need this? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's more than an option, because we don't really have any functioning options right now.
Yeah, everything is still
Yeah.
developing.
Yeah.
And
So I think people are super excited and looking forward for this, and that has been the feedback. And we're making sure that it's safe. But I don't think that there will be a shortage of people who are willing to fly with
willing
us.
to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to be one of the first few ones.
We would love to have you. Yeah.
So, are you only looking at passenger transport? You're not looking at any other use cases, or is that something that's going to come up in the future?
So passenger transport is our bread and butter. I think that's our aim. We do want to offer an air ambulance system for all of Bengaluru, and once we scale to other cities there as well.
Yeah.
And that's going to be completely free of charge for everyone in need.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we don't want to monetize that. Right now we see, ambulances being stuck in traffic, like people are not getting to hospitals on time.
Yeah.
I talked to people in Mumbai that decided to move houses because they were getting a little bit older,
Yeah.
and the risk increases. So they decided to shift somewhere where they're closer to a hospital
Yeah.
because they were too far away, so they might get stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
They're not actually far away, but like the traffic is making it
Yeah.
seem that
A
way.
lot of folks are doing this actually.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, think about that. That's a huge impact on our lives.
Yeah.
Like, do we really allow for bad traffic to have that kind of impact on our lives, right?
Yeah.
To potentially, yeah, I mean, decide over life and death. So we don't want that, and that's why we're offering free ambulance services for everyone in need once
No,
once we're operational.
that's great to hear.
Yeah,
Definitely need something like that here.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And outside of that, I think when it comes to logistics, like we're happy to deploy our vehicles to anyone who wants to do that. We don't want to get into logistics ourselves.
Right.
But you have 680 kilograms of payload, so it's like this is a technology that can be used for many different things, and I think that's ultimately up to the customers,
Right.
how they want to use it. But I don't think that logistics has a huge market.
Okay. And is this going to be inclusive for all age groups? Because I know you did mention the ambulance style aspect to this, but is everyone going to be comfortable? I mean, isn't it going to be compact? How do you plan to, or are you going to design to optimize for that particular purpose?
Yeah.
So can someone can a baby be on it? Can a pet be on it? Can
Yeah.
my grandmom be on it? You
Yeah.
know?
All of them, all of them
Okay.
can in fact fly in the same flying taxi. The interior that we have is very accessible. We have two doors that open on one door per side, and then you can access it just like a car. In fact, it's a little easier. It's maybe you can enter it like an SUV is what you can imagine, a little bit higher maybe.
Okay.
So you might need like one step
Yeah.
to get there, but it's very comfortable seating, and yeah, accessible for anyone.
Okay. That's
And
good
for
to
the
know.
ambulance, we obviously have a different layout. Like there's
Yeah.
going to be a stretcher and medical equipment. Yeah.
Right. And just to kind of, follow on the customer aspect of it, while a lot of people may be excited, I'm sure a lot of folks are also concerned. And I know we touched upon it earlier as well, but what are maybe your biggest concerns when it comes to safety of your passengers, and what are you guys doing to ensure that the highest standards of safety are in place?
So when it comes to the actual safety of the flying taxis, I don't think anyone needs to be worried because it's not even in our control. It's not even something where the policymakers are like, oh, you just build whatever you think is safe and then you launch it.
Yeah.
Like the regulators are very strict about what kind of testing has to be done, how many flight hours you have to collect, what kind of redundancy systems you have to have with you.
Right.
So everyone can rest assured that this is going to be safe. Like if you feel comfortable flying with a commercial airline right now, this is going to be as safe as that, and that's the safest mode of transportation ever invented. It might be a little shaky during takeoff and landing, but it's the safest
We're
mode.
used to it now.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
norm for us.
And I think that's one thing where we can increase the perceived safety of our passengers is to offer a more comfortable ride, because the comfort gives you as a passenger kind of the haptical feedback, so to speak, whether you feel comfortable in your environment right now. So we have very nicely isolated our interior,
Right.
to make sure that there's very little noise pollution. It's quiet inside.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of vibrations going on. So this whole like takeoff and landing that from commercial airliners will not be there. So it's going to be a very comfortable ride, and I think that adds to the perceived safety for our passengers. I'm mostly concerned about our passenger safety, like from like letting them go from us again. So like for their last mile or first mile, like if they have to come to us with a car, then that's where I'm concerned for their.
Right. And talking a little bit more about the infra needed for this, um, obviously, one, maybe who is going to be your potential customer, one, and what's the infra needed for a flying taxi?
So our potential customer is you, people who are fed up of being stuck in traffic. So we are directly catering to the people.
Okay, so you're not selling to someone else who is then going to run this. You are going straight to the people.
Yeah, that's our goal. That's where we want to be, and we want people to take Sarla like they take Uber right now. Right. Now, when it comes to logistic use cases or air ambulances, we will have to work with people because that's not our area of expertise. And I think the other part was about the initial customers that we're thinking about.
Yeah, I think you answered that, but what is the infra that you need to come up for me to be able to book a flying taxi?
We have our website. Our new website is launching in the next 2 weeks, so I encourage everyone to go on there. We have a section that's called Master Plan, where you can kind of read like step by step how we want to develop this. And in that master plan, we talk about our initial stage of operations, where we connect the airport with every five-star hotel across the city and every IT park across the city. Because these places, we know that people to whom time is really valuable lose a lot of time right now. So it just makes sense for us to connect these places and start out there because we have a little bit more leverage as well on the price point, before the economics of scale kick in. So that's going to be an additional set of customers and also infrastructure that we need. So what we're doing right now is we encourage our partners, such as developers, large development firms, IT parks, hotel chains, to work with us and build the infrastructure that is required for this. But we can basically land on every flat ground, that piece of flat ground that is like 15 meters by 15 meters.
1.5?
Yeah, in diameter. So in Bengaluru specifically, every building that's taller than 60 meters is required by law to have a helipad on top for fire evacuation right now. Now we can leverage that infrastructure already.
So a lot of it already exists.
A lot of it already exists. And a lot of the developers are really excited to be working together because, I mean, they're adding direct value to their projects. They can now connect, say that you're Prestige and you have like a residential complex, right? Yeah. And then we're working with a hospital that's not too far away. Yeah. You can connect these points in less than 5 minutes. Right. So we're adding a lot of value to everyone. This is not, I think, Sarla as a whole is not just a company that's like for the company. We want to make this a project and a movement that everyone can unite behind because it's just creating a much better future for the whole of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And just continuing on the infra bit, if y'all are looking to get onto different points in the city, what's it going to look like up in the air?
Yeah, that's a really good question actually, and one question that we had thought about early on. So we like long term this mass mobility vision for that we have will require about 30,000 flying taxis above the sky in Bengaluru. Now, that sounds like a lot. That is a lot. But if you are like on the street or looking out of your window, you will never see more than 10 at a time. Yeah, because the sky, there's so much space. Like, it's really hard for us to imagine how much space, or to process how much space there actually is above us. And obviously, if you take shorter distances, you fly at a lower height, and if you fly longer distances, you can fly at a little higher height. So it's going to distribute very, very well, and it's going to be quiet as well because we are electric. We have small propellers, so it'll be much quieter than what we have today with all the noise from the
Honks.
streets. Yeah, the honks and like the combustion engines, and yeah.
Are there going to be chartered routes for these things, or is it, free to kind of move around?
So this will take some time. So in our long term vision is that we can connect every point that has a landing site with the next point that has a landing site. So this long term vision enables us to, say you want to have lunch in Nandi Hills today, enjoy the view. Like, let's hop in a Sarla and go there. And that will also enable new economies to emerge, by the way, because all of a sudden you can have distributed restaurants, like whatever it might be, right? Like, I enjoy running in the morning, so like I would love to not have to go to a treadmill in the gym, but like instead go to a little outside the city for a run, right? Yeah. Like these kind of things where we connect actual points of interest with each other. This is I think the long-term vision where we want to go, and which we're working towards. Now in our phase one and of our master plan, how to get there, this will definitely be scheduled routes that are approved by the air traffic control and the airspace regulators, Ministry of Defense, DGCA, MOCA.
So, are you working closely with these guys? How is that kind of working out? Are they receptive? I know you mentioned earlier that FAA already has standards out. Is that something we are holding our standards to? What are you thinking?
So I think, well, yes, first of all, we are working very closely with the regulators. The regulators are a key stakeholder here. And it's a really exciting time for regulators actually as well, because for the first time in over 100 years, we have the option to actually have some real innovation happening in the airspace. Yeah. The last new category of regulation sets, like new category of flying vehicles, has been introduced in the 1930s. So since then, there was no real innovation. So Sarla is not just a company that comes across once in a century. It's also a technology that comes across once in a century, and a chance for regulators to build something really, truly amazing. Our Honorable Minister for Civil Aviation, Ramon Naiducci, has also, heard that and is totally on board with that. Incredible energy that is coming from the Ministry for Civil Aviation to make this happen. Even our PMO, Modi-ji, is also on board with this and has mentioned that flying taxis will be a reality in India very soon. So from like a very high level of policy making, there is a huge, tremendous will to make this happen, because I think everyone can see that the potential that flying taxis have for India is similar to the potential that cars had when Henry Ford decided to scale them to the United States. So we can build a superpower. We can build Viksit Bharat on the back of flying taxis. And that's the vision here. And that's where we unite not just the private sector behind, but also the public, the government sector behind. Having said that, there is a lot of like down to earth, on ground work to do that we all have to work through. How do we tackle that? Basically by working groups for different questions that we have. It's certification of the airplane. It's certification of the supply chain, of the manufacturing lines, of the design. Like all of these sort of very hands-on questions are being tackled one after another, and we're making progress on it that, on a day-to-day doesn't seem like a big step, but if you add months to months, you will see that there's actually something really, really big happening right now. And then there's the air traffic control systems that we're looking at, and so forth. So we are actually offering the government for to work with us on building a fully digital air traffic control system as well here. And I think the government has done it before. Like, that's the amazing thing. Like, we have examples like UPI where we can say most advanced payment system in the world, and everyone is proud of that, right? Like, the initial months when I came to India, I didn't have UPI. And
How did you manage?
yeah, exactly. Like, how did you manage, right? Like, it's not easy. Like, you're basically just ending up paying like 500 rupees for an auto ride that costs you maybe 150 rupees, because
They don't have change.
they don't have change, and like genuinely they don't have change. So like you just so UPI is amazing, and I think that we can have systems like that, and a political will like that happen for flying taxis.
Right. And is there something out already, or how long is it going to take to kind of have a first draft out?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a good set of regulations already at our hands that help us with. First of all, you have to define what is a flying taxi, right? Yeah. And like, obviously it's not just saying like flying taxi. It's like a technical term, and then the technical description of what this actually means. So this kind of very fundamental groundwork has been laid out by the DGCA. All, by the way, happening this year. So 2024 was an amazing year for flying taxis, and companies like ours. And then there are regulations for the landing infrastructure. What kind of approach angles do we have to look at? Like, how can they land? What kind of downwash are we expecting? Like, very technical on groundwork. And on that, I think we're making steady progress. And the FAA, like I mentioned, in the United States, they have finished that. It took them about 10 years. So we hope that now that the FAA has sort of done the hard, yeah, exactly, as a baseline, that we can adopt that policy, but make it work for India. I think one things that we're always very vocal when it comes to meetings with the policymakers is that if we just adopt what the FAA has done and don't change anything about it, then we're basically adopting a policy that is designed to favor American players, which makes sense for the FAA. They're an American regulatory body, so they have to like
Make it work for their
work for
region.
them. Yeah, exactly. But we want to build something that puts Bharat in the center of this policy and this vision for Viksit Bharat, which can be built on these regulatory frameworks as well. So I don't want India to just run after the West and say we have to sort of catch up and play this mouse and cat game here. We have to actually lead the space, and that's also on the regulators to make that happen.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing
Yeah.
what things are going to look like.
It's gonna be absolutely mind-blowing and amazing. Yeah, it'll be out of this world. Yeah, it's truly future. Yeah.
So, maybe I know you did bring this up ever so briefly about the new economies that could come up as a result of this whole ecosystem coming up. What do you think are some of the ancillary markets or industries that could pop up because of this new mode of transport?
I think the easiest way to look at that is to look at what the internet did to the digital space, because right now, okay, so say that you want to have, like, you're feeling like you really want to have a vada puff for right now, okay, but the restaurant next door is offering vada puff, but they're also offering dosa and idli and your thalis and whatnot. Like their menu is like a book. You can, you have 20 pages, right? So their vada pav is probably not going to be the best vada pav in a city, but it's the only option that you have right now because all the other restaurants are too far away for you to reach. So what happened with the internet as well, and what will happen here as well, is you will have more niche mass experiences. So there will be one restaurant in Bengaluru that will offer vada pav, but these vada pavs are going to be the best that you can get in a radius of like 150 kilometers. So everyone who wants to have that just goes directly there and enjoys the best of the best, right? And that goes probably for the other places as well that you can think about. At the same time, right now we have over 100 different small parks across the city. All of them are maintained more or less. Like some of them are better, some of them are worse, right? In the future, we will have also more mass experiences. Like we will have one really large park that will be maintained like beautifully, because you can then take the same resources that you have to maintain these small parks here and there and everywhere, to maintain one park really proper. So it will be like this initially, that we see these clusters happening and these niche experiences. You want to open a tea house and only offer hibiscus tea, like go for it. Like probably right now not possible because the people that could reach your tea house are too few in a reasonable time. In the future, that won't be the case. So you will have people who really love hibiscus tea having the ability to reach your tea house from all across the city, and that will dramatically change education. That will dramatically change medicine and healthcare because hospitals can specialize more. Like everyone can specialize more, and then you have really exciting things that can come up. Like well, before the podcast we spoke about this, but I love Mumbai. And if you live in Mumbai and you're like looking out into the waters, right, and you kind of have to wonder, what does the skyline look from the water? So you can just have like floating islands off the coast, with a landing pad, and then you have like a nice little garden site there and a table, and you can rent this island for a couple of hours, invite your friends, and then you're all chilling at a floating island like off the coast of Mumbai. Like how awesome is that? Right? Like these kind of business cases that will completely emerge that are currently not possible. And I think that probably what I can think about is probably less than 2% of what is going to happen, because the impact will be so dramatic. If you think about the impact of cars on our economy, companies like Walmart, not possible without cars. Like even all of the quick commerce platforms, not possible without the scooters or the roads that are there. So I think these are like sort of longer term future scenarios that I probably can't even think of, or none of. I mean, I would love for people to.
Yeah, I can see the world looking entirely different in a couple of decades,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
I know we spoke about a whole bunch of things. I just want to come back to the point on affordability. How expensive is it going to be? Is it for an average person?
So we are confident that we can offer it at the same pricing models that you would pay for an Uber X or Ola Prime SUV. So sort of like the high-end ground transportation that you can get today.
Yeah.
That will be the initial stages of this. Like long term, we want to make it as affordable as metro tickets today, because to get to the level where it can be mass transportation, it has to be really affordable.
Yeah.
And so we talked about this, but our flying taxi Shunya is designed through and through and like conceptualized around that, making it more affordable for everyone to participate and have the ability. That's the only way you can get to public transportation. Yeah.
But I guess we've all seen this curve where anything, right? Planes were so much more expensive back in
Right.
the day, and I guess it looks like the same trajectory will follow for any new
True.
technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a great point. We had, I mean, um, the analogy I think that is most easy to sort of look at is like how cars went, because cars were invented in Germany by, you know, cars like Mercedes and Maybach, basically
Yeah.
these brands, right? Premium brands today, premium brands back in that day as well. Very expensive vehicles, and then Henry Ford figured out how to scale cars
Yeah.
and mass manufacture them, and then that's when the industrialization of the United States happened, and that's when cars became a mass product,
Yeah.
enabling people to travel. And so we are looking at Sarla in a similar way, I think, where we try to have that Henry Ford moment for India. We
Yeah.
want to scale it. We want to be the ones that make it accessible. We're not the ones inventing it, inventing the product itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Exciting times ahead.
Very much.
All right, so my last question for you, Adrian. You're a young founder. Founder life is insanely hectic. How do you kind of balance out work and other things that are meaningful to you in life?
Well, first of all, I think that I feel very lucky and honored to uh, being part of India in that time right now, being accepted and welcomed here, to build this and to help turning the India that we have today into a Viksit Bharat by, you know, in 100 years after independence,
Yeah.
in 47. And so I think like there's a lot of gratitude that I feel towards the nation, and so that makes my work very meaningful. And I think this sense of building something really meaningful helps a lot when you work, you know, crazy hours, all of this, what we know, um, because it gives me the power to like keep going and to just feel like I have a real impact on the future of civilization. And I think that all of the folks working at Sarla are putting these hours. You know, it's not just me or the other founders, it's literally everyone working there who is driven by that, having this impact for India and for the nation, to win and to become the next global superpower. What I personally do to still get a little bit of sort of balance. I don't like the term balance too much, I think, because I don't think there is a balance. But that's okay, because I wake up in the mornings and I'm excited for my work.
Yeah.
And you know, when Sunday is over, I'm excited for Monday.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key ingredient that you need to
That
have.
makes all the difference.
What I still need to do is take care of my body. So
Yeah.
I go running in the mornings. I try to eat healthy, try to eat on time.
Yeah.
Like just trying to keep the routines going, and yeah, and then I travel to Germany twice a year, spend a week with my family and my friends there.
Amazing.
And that's pretty much about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's terrific. And Adrian, thank you so much for coming in. This was super insightful for me. Learned a lot. I'm sure it was quite inspiring and exciting also for everyone listening in. So, really appreciate you being here and taking the time.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in today. See you next episode.